Thank you so much to all the speakers. I'd just like to say a few words of conclusion. I just wanted to say, first of all, what a festival it's been. And I started with 10 questions, but many of you added many. Josh added many, so I think it's good. We should get to the magic number 23. That was the number of Hilbert questions at the beginning of the century. I would like to very briefly mention some of the key dimensions of this huge question space that we could expand infinitely, but in the spirit of data compression and also the idea from Manuela that we can have a space of concepts, I would like to think a little bit about this question space and what remains to be done. The first dimension of this question space, I think, is this tension that we have between what's specific to humans and what we share with other animals, the problem that I call human singularity. Of course, we love animal work because it allows us to go deep into the machinery, and we believe in animal models. And I think we've seen today how extraordinary the progress is, especially on the first day, using neuropixels to go inside any of the systems, like the face system, the object recognition system, and understand very deeply how it works. But that's always done, of course, in animals. And although we believe, of course, in the evolutionary origins of human abilities, and also perhaps some of you like this idea of neuronal recycling, so many of our human abilities are just adaptations or maybe exaptations of these evolutionary older abilities. But at some point, I still think we need to account for the fact that there is not a single monkey in this room today, I hope. There is only humans that have this ability to develop incredible human programs. And I think we need human tree structures. We need something like symbols. Of course, there will be an implementation of symbols, but there's something very particular there. And I'd like to reiterate the need to search for human-specific structures, cell tunings. And I am so excited by the presence, for instance, of Florian Morman and other colleagues who are able, like Lipin, to begin to record from human cells, because I'm sure there is a huge source of discovery there. So that's my first dimension, human singularity versus animals. And what we share with animals. The dimension 2 is a bit related, is tension between innateness versus what we learn. I think Josh put it very simply. I love very simple sentences that are very deep. What is built in, and how do you learn the rest? Okay. Two great dimensions of questions. And now, the first thing to be very clear is that there is innateness. I think it's worth repeating in this age of AI, there's so much, exposure to tons of data, and somehow these models are supposed to reproduce how we work. But if you were not convinced already by the work of Elisabeth Spelker or by the work of Ghislaine in young babies, now this morning you saw Edvard Moser's data, it's absolutely clear that there are innate structures that just appear from one day to the next in the little mouse. I mean, the data that we saw this morning is just extraordinary. We should not be surprised. I mean, there are programs in our body that develop hands and fingers and all of this organization. Well, now we see that there are similar programs that develop spontaneously torus that will be the basis for grid cells later on. So there is innateness, undoubtedly. But yet, we still have to account for the enormous impact of education on the human brain. And I want to see more studies of that. I think it's hugely important. It's not just important to understand who we are. All of you in this room would be very, very different without education. But also it's very important in the current world because we might be losing a little bit in the field of education. There are many counter forces to education. There is a huge country that we love that is being threatened, where education is labeled as the enemy. And at least higher education, I wonder about younger education, at which point it will also be a target. So maybe it is already a target. So I think it is hugely important that we understand better education, how to facilitate it. And also I loved Elisabeth Spelker's question. I don't know where you are, Liz, if you are still in the room there. Why are humans educable? The educability issue. There's something singular there as well. And we need to understand what are the learning algorithms, the learning rules, maybe Josh pointing to a few of them, that make education possible at all. that again seem to be very different in our species compared to others. I don't know of other species that really educate. There are maybe very, very few exceptions, but by and large, we are the only species that educate ourselves. And the third dimension is one that was actually not touched a lot during this meeting, is the conscious versus unconscious dimension, which I'm myself very interested in. There was, of course, a whole session on conscious processing, and the levels of conscious processing were discussed by Lucia, Biou, Claire, Lionel. But we want to know which of these computations that we saw today can unfold unconsciously, and which are the ones that require a specific architecture for consciousness. That's a tough question. Maybe in the end the problem will just dissolve and we'll realize that these are all computations, and labeling them as conscious or unconscious is a bit arbitrary. I think a lot of what Josh was describing today has to do with just algorithms that can unfold. And I think, Josh, at the end you were hinting that maybe consciousness is just a sort of internal model that we develop for ourselves. There's nothing very particular about this model versus other models that we develop for the outside world. I don't know if that's the answer, but I do think that's an area where we do a lot more work to contrast conscious versus unconscious computations. So just 3 dimensions. Pick up your point in this huge problem space, in this coordinate system. There are many more questions, I'm sure, so the dimensionality of the problem is huge. And I hope we will meet again in 10 years to see all the progress that you've all accomplished. It's really a pleasure to see all of the young people in the room already started to carve out their trajectory in this problem space. So it's been a privilege to work with all of you. And by the way, it's not finished. It's not my retirement, right? I think maybe Pierre Jacob wants to tell an anecdote that he was hearing, well, I will tell it, that he was up hearing some people talking and saying, oh, Stan Dehaene is celebrating its 70th birthday. It's not true, and I'm still here for a little while. I would like to thank a lot of people for this extraordinary meeting. It's been very emotional for me. First of all, thanks to Collège de France for being such a great host, not just today and yesterday and the day before, but in fact for 20 years now. This place is a place where everything runs easily, and in spite, of course, of budget constraints, we are very privileged, I think, to be here at Collège today. So that's my first word of thanks. Thanks you to the musicians. You saw a glimpse of what happened last night. We had 2 wonderful musicians, Leopoldo Gianola and Zhang Zhang. If you ever need to throw a party and get great musicians, you can call them. Thanks to the funders of this workshop, and especially to ERC. We are extremely lucky in France to be under the umbrella of Europe for many reasons, not just science, but including science. And the European Research Council program is one of the best that has really changed the landscape of science in Europe, and it funded this particular meeting. I would like to thank Laurence, Khadija, Vanna in particular, for the extraordinary organization. Thank you, Vanna. I think you deserve a round of applause. And finally, I would really like to thank all of the speakers. When I wrote to you, I thought, well, I will write to a number of my friends and we'll see who comes and we'll make a small program. And everybody said yes. And maybe I should have expected. I don't know. This is Paris. This is nice. We used to have good meetings. But I'm so grateful for all of you. You traveled across the Atlantic. You traveled from New York, traveling from Shanghai. You traveled from really distant places to make this meeting a success. So thanks a lot to all of you. Thank you.